Don't have an intro? Don't want one. Let's talk about Bo Nix. As always, we start with strengths. Let's get into it. Bo Nix doesn't necessarily have any elite traits, but he is above average in many areas. He has what I would define as a B plus to maybe an A minus arm, which he pairs with a quick, concise release and an excellent ability to change his arm angle and still deliver the pass accurately. I honestly didn't really expect to see this when I watched him, but he consistently is able to alter his release to flick the ball fluidly out of his hand from different arm angles, which is not a necessary requirement to be a quarterback, but it creates a higher ceiling because it gives him the ability to throw around defenders or from a bad base, allowing him to make throws with defenders in his face or when he doesn't have time to reset his feet or go through his full release. With his arm strength, he also shows excellent coordination to throw on the run or off platform accurately, whether it be on designed rollouts or while rolling out of the pocket in scramble drill situations. He's actually very experienced in boot action plays as he ran a ton of them in college, and the combination of his athleticism, arm, and ability to throw off platform make him extremely effective on these types of plays. Speaking of athleticism, he's also an above average athlete. In the pocket, he uses his athleticism to evade defenders or break out of the pocket and throw on the run. He's not what I'd define as a sudden mover, but he is shifty in space to sometimes make defenders miss behind the line of scrimmage, which is shown by his 7.6 pressure to sack conversion rate, which was the 7th best in the nation in 2023. He has good straight line speed, shown by a reported 40 time of 4.75 seconds, which would be in the 67th percentile for quarterbacks, and he uses that speed to scramble when there are no throws available to pick up easy yards. He may be athletic enough to be used in the read option game, but I don't really consider him to have the top end speed or shiftiness to be a huge play threat, but he'll be an efficient rusher and will fight for tough yards in short yardage situations, so he may be useful in that regard. But as a quarterback, you do have to throw the ball at least every once in a while, so let's talk about his passing abilities. I try to be as unbiased as possible, so I hate to admit this, but I went into his tape not really expecting to like him based on what I had heard about him. But Nix definitely flashed enough high level play in the games that I watched of him to inspire belief. At times, he shows elite anticipation to fire the ball to wide receivers into tight windows in the middle of the field, an area often neglected by college quarterbacks because of how dangerous it is to throw there, and I didn't really see Nix turn down throws to the middle of the field often, which I loved. I did, however, see him just not look to the middle of the field too often, which will be discussed in the weaknesses section, but when he saw throws in the middle of the field, he was willing to roll the dice and pull the trigger, and he made some very difficult throws into tight windows with anticipation, and also lobbed in some beautiful layered throws in between the levels of defenders. For example, on this play, Nix starts his windup on this throw before the wide receiver is even out of his break, and then fires this ball over the middle of the field, right past the ref's ear and into the wide receiver's chest. On this next one, Nix is under pressure, and he throws this one off platform to find the wide receiver in the soft spot of the coverage. And on this last one, Nix shows an excellent balance of touch and zip to get the ball to his wide receiver quickly, but also to layer the ball into that precise spot in between the linebacker and safety level to avoid any defenders making a play on the ball. That right there is an NFL level throw. He flashes great field awareness and decision making at times. He's a bit of an eyes in the back of his head quality about him, where he'll not be looking at a guy and just knows he's open. You could tell this because he'll use his eyes to look off safeties or linebackers and then will just turn and fire the ball without confirming the receiver's open or really even looking to where he is, which is high level stuff. He just trusts that the route is ran perfectly and he throws the ball to his spot. He shows a lot of what you want to see in an NFL quarterback, even if it's just in flashes. It gives you the confidence that it's there, but I do get concerned with the overall consistency, which again, I'll talk about later. Nix is really at his best working in rhythm in the short areas of the field, especially the short middle. He will absolutely pick defenses apart in the quick game with accurate underneath throws made with anticipation. He works very well in structure, and he's a very good captain of the ship type quarterback. One of my favorite YouTubers, That Franchise Guy, Marcus Whitman, compared Nix to Brock Purdy in some ways, and I had to steal/borrow the comparison, whichever word you want to use, because I very strongly agree with it. They aren't strict comparisons in every sense, but Nix definitely reminds me of Purdy in the sense that he has the athleticism to extend plays in the pocket and can create a little bit out of structure, but probably works at his best in the structure of the offense, running timing concepts, throwing with anticipation, and being surrounded by high-level playmakers. On top of everything we've discussed, Nix also has the advanced stats and the accolades to back up the hype. In 2023, he was a finalist for the Heisman, he was Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Year, and made first team All-Pac-12. He was first in the nation in PFF passing grade with a 92.7, and also first in adjusted completion percentage, which was 85.4%. His 1.0 turnover-worthy play percentage was first in the nation, his 135.8 passer rating was second, his 2.44 time to throw was the fourth lowest, and as mentioned, his 7.6 pressure to sack conversion rate was 7th best. But unlike Seahawks receiver Jake Bobo, Bo Nix is not the perfect prospect. So let's talk about his weaknesses now. We'll start with one of the main talking points, which is his age and ceiling. At draft time, he'll be 24 years old and will have played college ball for 5 seasons. He had a hot start to his Auburn career, but after several years of poor level play, he wasn't considered a high-level prospect again until this recent season. Progression is not always linear, but it can be concerning when a prospect only has one season of really high-level play. There are also questions about his upside due to not having any elite traits. At the Senior Bowl, he measured in at slightly under 6'2", which is around the 30th percentile for height, and as discussed before, he's an above-average athlete with above-average arm strength, but he's really not necessarily high-level or elite in any of those categories, so it remains to be seen whether he can truly elevate an offense. This leads me to my next point in that his production and overall play was inflated by his college offense. Let's first start with something that I uncovered that I thought was fascinating. On 498 dropbacks, Bo Nix was only pressured on 79. For context, he was the only quarterback in college football to have less than 80 pressured dropbacks while having over 450 total dropbacks. In fact, he and Carson Beck are the only quarterbacks to have under 100 pressured dropbacks on more than 450 dropbacks, and he had exactly 40 more dropbacks than Beck. His 15.9% rate of pressured dropbacks was first in the nation by over 3%. Carson Beck had the second lowest percentage of dropbacks under pressure at 19%. So we've established that he wasn't forced to play under pressure often, but he was also helped out a ton by the talent around him and the play calling. 22.1% of his dropbacks were screen passes, which was the 7th most, and 36.5% of his passes were play action passes, which was the 25th most. Only 10.9% of his passes went over 20 yards, which was 130th in the nation. Only 19.5% went to the 10 to 20 range, 56th in the nation, and 27.9% of his passes were behind the line of scrimmage, which was the 5th most of any quarterback. He just wasn't really asked to make difficult throws that often, which is shown in his 4.1 big time throw percentage, which ranked 57th of 95 quarterbacks, but it also shows in the film. To me, his tape indicates that he wasn't asked to read the full field often, he wasn't asked to push the ball downfield, he wasn't asked to make that many difficult throws. There were a lot of first read, second read, then run type plays, tons of RPOs and screens, and a lot of 1 or 2 read vertical concepts. It felt almost like a lot of throws were just designed checkdowns because he'd look at number 1 and then move off and throw to the checkdown without reading any of the rest of the field. For example, on this play, Nix reads his number 1, sees that he's not open, and then just settles for the checkdown. I'm not sure why we ignore this completely open wide receiver, especially from a clean pocket, when there's time to throw. Yes, I appreciate the fact that he doesn't want to hold on to the ball too long, but the preference is for him to at least check from a clean pocket before just throwing the check down. On this next one, he again looks to his first read and then progresses straight to the check down, missing the tight end who slipped past the linebackers, who he could have hit over the top for a pretty good gain. If we just take a quick look here in a clean pocket before taking the check down, it's a different story on this play. These missed opportunities were often over the middle of the field because he'd be reading his primary on the outside and then just would swing right to his check down, who was also on the outside. It's really hard to know if this was him or if this was how he was coached to read the play, but there were so many missed opportunities due to checking down too fast. As for more weaknesses, his footwork is very inconsistent, even when kept clean, but is even worse when he's under pressure. When moving in the pocket, he also sometimes puts himself in positions where he can't throw the ball, which can lead to many missed opportunities. He also drifts into pressure, he has very antsy feet at times, and will frequently bail from clean pockets instead of just sitting and finding another throw. Here, Nix is looking at the wide receiver and correctly pulls the ball down to avoid the route being jumped. Now he basically just doesn't know what to do with himself and he runs himself into pressure instead of resetting and firing this ball to the wide receiver in the middle or finding his check down. Here, his first read isn't open and he takes off a bit too early. Instead of taking off here, if he just moves to his next read, he could have found his tight end up the seam depending on how quickly he moves off his number 1. But overall, his biggest weakness to me is his inconsistency in many areas of the field, mainly decision making, hesitancy, and accuracy. Decision making is the least of my concerns with this one, as he's generally a very sound decision maker, but he does frequently make bad decisions in the scramble drill and will put the ball in harm's way. More worrying is his indecisiveness and accuracy. He'll inexplicably turn down perfectly easy, wide open throws at times, even when he's looking right at them, and he'll turn down other throws when a defender is slightly too close for comfort, but where 9 times out of 10 he'll fit the ball in. For example, here he pulls back as if to rip the throw to the wide open tight end, and instead he just pulls it down to run. It wasn't the cleanest pocket ever, but this ball could have been thrown. Here, Nix sticks onto his first read too long in my opinion. Presumably he wouldn't just be staring at the first read, he'd be reading the actual concept itself, but I think if he was doing that, he'd see the tight end coming open towards the sideline and rip this throw. But he doesn't, so I think he's only just looking at his first guy. But then he quickly looks to the middle of the field, where he has the arm talent to rip this throw to number 5 on his back shoulder away from the safety, but he could also fire this into number 11, Troy Franklin. Instead, he starts sprinting around the backfield. Admittedly, he winds up finding Franklin underneath, but he missed the chance for a bigger play in my opinion. This indecisiveness can leave opportunities on the table and make him late on throws if he does decide to pull the trigger, and the indecisiveness creeps not only into his decision making, but his accuracy as well, especially when throwing downfield. Generally, his accuracy and ball placement is just get it there ball placement, where it's not a perfect spot, but it'll get it to the general area where a receiver can probably make a play on it. But I do see him constantly over and underthrowing the deep ball, and he missed way more than I wanted to see. But all of this isn't to say that Nix can't be a great NFL player. I just personally find that he's more limited than some of the other prospects in this class, and that he might require more around him. I kind of see him similarly to Baker Mayfield in a sense that he plays really well in rhythm, in the structure of the offense, and can thrive with good playmakers and a great offensive line around him. He may create sometimes, but the offense can't really rely on his creation skills, and he leans towards being more of a point guard, set your teammates up with quality play type quarterback, rather than a quarterback who goes above and beyond. With all of his strengths and weaknesses in mind, I have his grade as a late second rounder. If you want to scoff at that, go ahead. But I'll have you know that I try to keep my scale very harsh on purpose. So what is a late second on my grading scale might be a late first or early second on another grading scale. For context, last year, I only had 13 first round grades. I feel like the scale helps to keep the grading consistent across years rather than adjusting the scale every year to try and compare a player's worth to the talent in their draft class instead of other talent as a whole. In this particular draft class, Nix is probably a first rounder, but I haven't scouted everybody, so it's impossible for me to say whether he actually falls within the top 32. Anyways, that's going to be it everyone. Thanks for watching and I really hope you enjoyed. I had a lot of fun watching Nix and making this video. I recently just made a second channel to post some less edited content like mock drafts, film breakdowns of lesser known prospects, and some NFL trivia stuff. I'd love if you guys came around because I intend on posting a lot more frequently over there because it'll take less effort to get those videos out. No worries though, because these videos will still be on the same pace. Otherwise, I'd really appreciate a like as it really helps out the channel, and I'd love if you joined our community here and subscribed so you could talk ball with everyone on each video to come. Let me know who you guys want to see next. Otherwise, I'm out. Later.